All right. Well, I'm live at the Red House with Tucker Tharpe.
Hello.
Hello.
How are you, Tyler, now?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm good. It feels official.
It is official.
It's official. I'm
You're,
here.
You're officially here on the Red House podcast.
After some of the guests you've had, it's makes me feel kind of like, what am I doing here? Because everybody you've had on here, especially a handful of them, especially John and Josh and Andy and just those, I don't know, and Doug Davis. I love that guy so much. I'm starting to wonder what I'm here for. If this is a setup, maybe y'all are going to attack me or something.
No, I feel quite the opposite. I feel like especially because you have been pretty much from the first point that I started entertaining the possibility of doing a podcast. You've been a huge part of my support network for that. You've been a huge part of my whole career as a musician in Winston-Salem. I'm just glad that you're here to talk to me about things, especially given that the garage has come up so much as I've talked to musicians, and that was something that you and I talked about recently. It's been a couple years since the garage closed, so I guess maybe we could just start the conversation off by let's start with where you're at now and go backwards.
Okay.
So what are you up to, man?
Okay, so these days I'm working for a family company. It's called Spevco, Spevco Incorporated. Check us out at spevco.com. And I got there through way of, my father started the company in 1973. We're one of the country's largest OEM manufacturers of specialty vehicles. We build the Oscar Mayer Wienermobiles.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, we do that. And from that all the way to, which those aren't really, they're awesome and they're fun and it's cool to brag about. But the some of the other vehicles that we build, are really, really sophisticated and really high tech and super neat. And Dad started in the 70s. He's a paint and body guy, and then he started a body shop. Eventually, it turned into, one of his buddies, to make the story as short as I can, because it's a 50-year-old story. So, more or less, one of his buddies was on his way quickly to becoming the president of sports marketing enterprise at Reynolds, and he was a firefighter and a show car driver named T. Wayne Robertson, and he ended up being the president at Sports Marketing Enterprises. So he controlled the brand that is NASCAR at the time, or it was Winston Cup. Back when you could still market tobacco, before that stopped. And so that's how it really got started. It was, some of the race teams wanted my old man to paint an image or a version of their race car on the side of their car hauler. So when a few of those guys showed up to Daytona with their car on the outside of the truck, then the next thing you know, there was a line down the road to get my dad to do the same thing to that, and it just turned into, hey, can you put a lift gate on this trailer? We'd like to put a machine shop in the middle of this one. We want to put an extra car, and we want to be able to carry two cars up top and one in the middle, and have a machine shop down here. And then at the end of the day, up till today, a trailer is just a trailer. It's just whatever you put in it is what purpose it serves. So now we're building medical trailers, disaster relief trailers. We've just deployed some stuff. So, in the future, if you look back on this podcast, the terrible weather that happened out in the Midwest and the tornadoes and all that stuff, we've got vehicles on the way out there. We work with banks and other disaster relief companies, groups out there to help, clean up messes. One of the big, I got to be a part of the Katrina cleanup after that, way back in the day, after that hurricane took over. So that's where I am. I'm working there. I'm a brand manager. I built our website, or rebuilt our website, I should say, technically. And then I spend most of my day in SEO, searching and stuff, pay-per-click stuff. I spend a lot of time in Google. I use a third-party software to capture leads for our sales team from our website. So I build our website in a way that, hopefully draws you in, gives you information you need, and then once you've hit a certain point where it's time to talk to somebody, you click that, schedule an appointment, and then you get me.
Very cool.
Yeah, so that's what I'm doing now. Probably the most important thing I'm doing right now is being a dad. I've got a 4-year-old little boy named Sullivan, and my beautiful wife Casey, who you know, and hey, you've known her for at least probably just as long as you've known me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're doing good, man. We're doing good.
I'm glad to hear it.
Thank you. I hope y'all are doing good. This is cool. I've been watching every one of these, and it's really neat.
I love doing this.
Yeah.
I love getting to talk to just, people from the hometown, people that you and I used to be around like every other week.
Yeah.
And just hear more about.
I think that's why I like
music.
it so much. It's like a conversation that I used to have almost every day.
Yeah.
And I haven't had it in so many, in 3 or 4 years now. And, I crave that. I don't think people understood the volume of people. I was so, bigger venues have more people, bigger staff, more people are responsible for handling, taking care of the musicians and taking care of just everything. And so for me at the garage, I kind of did all the hospitality. And so if we had, on average of 4 shows a week, then we would have an average of 3 bands per day. So that's 12 shows a week. And let's just say that each one of those bands had an average of 3 people. We're getting to nearly 40 people that I would meet that were uniquely gifted people that had a cool story. And I got to tell my story on repeat.
Yeah.
Over and over again, which is why I think a lot of people have already maybe heard my story. So I guess we could apologize to some of your listeners for for me telling the same story they've already heard once or twice.
Well, we might as well revisit it one more time.
Might as well.
Let's
do it.
Let's start with how you found yourself involved in the garage at the first place, and what was your first impression of the garage?
So I took my wife there for a Chris Barron concert. Chris Barron is the lead singer of the Spin Doctors. He sings songs like Little Miss Can't Be Wrong. I can't remember. I got a cameo from him for my wife on our anniversary, like last year. Tripped her out. It was funny because it was a couple years ago. But yeah, I took her there just on a whim. We just heard the guy from the Spin Doctors was playing there, and we'd been across the street at Finnegan's. Rest in peace, Finnegan's. And the city will miss you, but we won't miss Opie because that guy he didn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
And I expect the same thing probably people hopefully expected from me. I expect him not to go away.
No, definitely not. He's such a personality.
He taught me so much. I don't even think that he knows, but the sober Irishman, so I got a lot of strength from him being a sober person too, because I figured if a sober guy could run an Irish pub, then a sober guy's got to be able to run a music club. And so it didn't seem like that bad of an idea. Now, I wouldn't suggest it to anybody who's struggling with addiction to go into service industry work where you're constantly around alcohol and things like that. It's probably not a great idea, but it worked out okay for me. I think that I just needed to be obsessed with something else. And so my addiction went from, alcohol to, it went from alcohol to music.
Yeah.
And then I became somewhat manically obsessed with it. But yeah, so I we'd been over at Finnegan's with some friends and just thought it was a goof. Hadn't been to the garage yet. Ended up leaving my tab there that night. Had a lot of fun. And so I went back there the next day to get my card, and it wasn't open. I was like, what do you mean you're not open? It's Friday night. They're like, we don't have a show. And I was like, so what? You're a bar. Open up. You know what I mean? Like, people will come drink. She tells you how little I knew about what was going on at the time. And so that was how I first found the garage. That was how I first heard of it. I grew up going to Ziggy's and, all that. I had a very similar story to Andy's, except I'm from here. I don't think Andy's not from here.
He's from Florida, I think you said.
But when he got to Wake, he was just like a mainstay at Ziggy's, and so was I whenever I was home, because I traveled a lot during my younger years. So whenever I was home, I was at Ziggy's checking out whoever was playing. And so they said there was this little music club around the corner, and so we went and had a good time. And that was probably the first time. My wife would definitely not. she would tell you that that was not a date. I stand firm. That was a date. That was our first date. I was at the garage. And then, you know, at the time, you fast forward a few years, and somehow or another, a woman named Lynette Matthews Murphy, some people might know her from the Downtown Winston-Salem Partnership. They might know her from Springhouse and Quanto Basta. She owns both of those restaurants, and she's just a wonderful, wonderful woman. And I was at Spevco, and she came to Spevco to see if we could refurbish that stage trailer, the really old tin can stage trailer they had that barely worked, the city owned. And then they ended up just giving it away to the Downtown Partnership because I don't think it was worth anything. I don't think it was worth what you could get in scrap metal, you know. And so we fixed it up at Spevco. I remember she said, "We'll put your name on there and everything." I said, "Oh no, please don't." You know, we'll get it working, and then just we're good, because it was a real piece. And so I met her, and then I guess she just kind of, you know, like I was taken by her. I think maybe she was a little taken by me, and she was like, "We need a young man like you, you know, to work. Like, do you have any friends that might be interested in this job?" It's the event director job at the Downtown Winston-Salem Partnership. And I was like, you know, I'm so much like my father that I was always looking for something else. I never dreamed that I would just, you know, that I would be 40 years old at Spevco still. And I was right, because I ended up leaving for, you know, over a decade, maybe even longer, you know, 13, 14 years I left. Because that was such a safe place for me to go. I knew I could go. I went to college. I played soccer. I came home, and I went right to work for my dad. And so I ran it by him, and he said, "Well, go and do it and turn it into something, or go and try it, and then, you know, if it don't work out, you know, get your ass back to work." And so that was kind of the freedom I needed to go and try something, because he understood my urge to go. You know, Spevco may be the most extraordinary company in the world to some people, but if you grow up there, it's just normal.
Yeah.
It's just normal to me. It's like, you know, if Tom Cruise was your dad, you wouldn't, well, that's probably an extreme example, but, you know, if he was your dad, you wouldn't think of him as Tom Cruise, the famous star. Like, he'd just be dad.
Well, it's like with like Will Smith's kids. I think I've heard stories of how they're sort of, they have difficult relationships with the entertainment industry, because for them it's not the same as for whatever. For me, when I was like a young kid, if somebody had been like, here's easy access into the entertainment world, I would have been like, holy shit, I didn't think this was possible. But for them, it's the environment they've been in their whole life.
Yeah, here's the world, and they're like, I don't care, I don't want that.
Yeah.
And then it's just shocking when you find out that they don't want that, because millions and millions and millions of people around the world, you know, they would give anything to find themselves in their situation just for a moment.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean much to them. So don't get me wrong, I'm overwhelmingly, literally when I say overwhelmingly, I'm not just saying it as like, I'm not exaggerating to get a point across. I really am overwhelmed by the love and support of my family through all the ups and downs of my lifetime and career. But anyway, to answer the actual question, I went to the Downtown Partnership, and I worked there for about 3 years, a little shy of 3 years. I worked with Jason Thiel. Shout out to Jason. He was really great to me. And Justin Gomez and I, you know, we put together a giant wine festival for the first time called Salute. It still goes on today. It's one of the largest wine festivals it was the largest wine festival in the state while we were doing it. I managed Alive After 5. I managed, I had to change it. You know, it used to be Friday night jazz and blues on 4th Street, and it was huge. But there was a lot of stuff that went into that. But we changed that into kind of a smooth jazz night on Friday nights, and then Saturday was Summer on Trade. And so being around that Summer on Trade, you know, you booked original music for that. I'd never done that before. So they hired this guy. He had a lot of keys, a little bit taller than me, and he had a beard like yours, and I just did not know what to think of this man, but his name was Richard Emmett. And I was like, okay, I guess this guy's the expert who's going to come help me book this first year of shows. And he did it swiftly, and he did it with confidence, and he did it, you know, he didn't cut any corners. He didn't do anything. You know, his entire purpose was, this has got to be great. This whole thing's got to be great. And so just watching him work was one of the coolest things. And so that was the moment that I became obsessed with, you know, talent management, working with talent, booking musicians. There's something about it. It's very similar to Spevco, because at Spevco you can start with a drawing on a napkin and then get it to your creative department, have them draw it, then get that drawing to an engineer, have him build it, and then get that drawing to our fabricators on the floor and watch it come out of sticks of steel.
Mm-hmm.
So you get to see an idea become reality. And so I loved the idea of booking a series of music and then watching it come to, then promoting it. You know, the party's booked, you promoted it, you've done everything you can. Now it's time to manage it when it happens. And I think that's where if I had one skill, I think that was probably it. It was, being able to manage those social situations, being in the middle of what appeared to be chaos was where I felt probably the most comfortable.
Right.
And then somewhere along that line, my drinking had started to get kind of out of control. And I left the Downtown Partnership, went back to Spevco. It was some really low times for me. The drinking got way out of control. That's when I started to go to rehab and detox and things like that, and started to get cleaned up. And then in 2011 was when I finally got clean. And then in 2012 I bought the garage.
Okay, cool. I didn't know. I've heard parts of your story many times, but I didn't realize that like 1 year before you bought the garage was when you got sober.
I'd been sober for 1 year when I bought it. Yeah, for just over a year. So it was February 10th, 2011 was when I had my last drink. So, and it was I suppose it was about May of 2012 that we closed on a deal with the garage. And to this day, absolutely, if you're going to trade one thing, I think that all people who are struggling with addiction would, and have had some success with maybe beating it or there's no winning there. There's no beating. I also don't have any advice for anybody. I can tell you my story and I can encourage you in a positive way, but I don't love giving out advice because it's reckless. And, but for me, I definitely needed to replace that addiction with something else. And so I think I replaced my addiction to alcohol with the garage and all of its activities. And so that was what I think people saw, in me when I was doing it. It was just like I had this, like, it's got to work passion,
When you say it that way, I guess one could interpret it as, I don't know. I've never been through a program where I had to deal with an addiction or whatever. Was that a positive replacement? Was that a beneficial replacement?
Definitely in the beginning. I think towards the end, when things started to go south, it was, we can talk about it more, and I don't want to spend way too much time on it now because me, I'll go on about one thing for way too long. But in the end, I think I saw its ugly face again because it was like, it tore me up. I didn't handle it well at all emotionally.
You mean the
closing it,
closing the garage?
Yeah. I'd had, my son was 6 months old when I closed it. The day that I got the last piece of furniture out of there was the day before my son's first birthday. So the first year of his life, I was definitely dealing with some really hard things. And also in all the while I had to find work and make ends meet for us all. So I found myself back at Spevco.
Yeah.
And, no, man, anything worth doing's, probably going to be hard. And so it was very hard. And, and what I mean by I saw it show its ugly face, it was that, I was losing. It was something that you and I kind of talked about off camera. I made my identity was the garage. I was Tucker, the guy who owns the garage. That was who I was. It's who I still am to a lot of people, is the guy who used to own the garage. And that's fine. I'm proud of it too. And I don't mind it when people say that at all. And it's not a sad memory anymore. But when it was closing, it hurt so bad that I could not make it work. It hurt me so much that there were parts of me that wanted to shut down. And then like I told you out there, I said, I got a little boy that would look at me and call me daddy, and all the cliche things that people say about becoming a parent, in my case, were true. And all I really cared about was making sure that I could provide for my little man and for my wife in the way that they deserve to be provided for.
Yeah.
Not that my wife can't take care of herself. She most certainly can. She's proven that time and again. And I'm sure if she were forced to, she would prove it again. But I hope that she doesn't ever have to.
There's a lot of different things that come to mind as we talk about this stuff, a lot of different ways we could start to let it unfold.
Sure.
I think the first thing, I guess my instinct is to say, you and I did a lot of work together at the garage. The garage was a pivotal part of my life. And I think we could have a conversation that expresses our gratefulness for that time period, my gratitude for it and all this. And as you've seen, everybody that's come on the podcast so far that's like a working musician has had something something along the way to say about the garage and how much they feel its absence. And I don't want that to be negative for you in any way.
No, it's happy tears. It's like it's happy tears. I'm glad that what Richard was able to start, I was able to jump in there and run it into the ground. No, I'm just kidding. I was able to I was able to leave a mark. I was able to help a lot of people along the way, and I got to work with people like you, and that has enriched my life in a way that I wouldn't have gotten otherwise. And I don't know if anybody out there cares, but I should say that working with you has always been such a pleasure. Like it was, I think about you and the shows that we did, and just the things that we would try. That we'd just get creative, and we knew we didn't have much, but we would do just about anything we could to promote these shows and get people to come out. You would play for free.
Yeah.
I would, how can I ever thank you for that? You know what I mean? It's just one of those things where it's rare, I believe, to have a musician believe so much in a music venue that's like, hey, I'll come up there and play for free as long as we can get. And then we did have big shows where you did get a paycheck, and we did have, it would turn around. And you're not the only one, but you're like, you stand out to me in the aspect that you were willing to. It wasn't just like, I'll play no matter where, even if I'm not getting paid. I don't believe you would have done that.
No.
I believe you were playing because you genuinely wanted to help me out, because you knew that I genuinely wanted to help you out. And I spent a lot of time, I mentioned this to you earlier before we got on mic, that I spent a lot of time back in those days obsessing over social media to grow our platform, so that even if the band didn't get paid much, they would at least get, maybe 10, 20, 30, 100 new followers out of being, basically featured on our social media channel. And I really kind of honed my photography skills that I may or may not have, depending on. I am no Andy, but I'm pretty mean with the camera, and that translates to my work today as a brand manager, controlling all of our content. So there's 3 or 4 professional photographers at Spevco, and I am one of them. So I mean, it all translates. I just, I just, you helped me, I helped you, I hope. And, I wanted to make sure, just to finish the thought, I guess, out there, is that there are a lot of terrible music venue owners out there. There are a lot of real snakes There are a lot of folks out there that would love to do. They'll do anything they can to keep $8 from you. They'll make you chase them across the room to get $10 out of their pocket. You know,
Yeah.
I know that's true, and I know that exists, and I have too many friends who have experienced that and told me all about it. And it was my goal just to never be that, guy, to always be, you know, a champion for the artist, as opposed to, you know, to manipulate and get what I could out of the artist for me. It was just never about that, which is probably why it failed. You know, it's probably,
yeah.
I wasn't, I don't have that killer instinct. You know,
I know what you mean.
I don't have, and I mean that in kind of a good way. Like, I do care what happens to you when you leave. And so I think some people have, if I'd cared less, maybe it would have been, maybe I would have been a little more profitable. But ultimately, I don't think, given the environment and climate and everything, I don't think that the climate of music in Winston-Salem, I should say, you know, at the time, I don't think it would have changed the outcome. It may have just prolonged it. But I needed to make a move personally anyway, because there was no way I was going to be able to provide for my kid on the money. Before we had a child, Casey made plenty of money, and we could, you know, I could go a week or two, you know, broke, and she could take care of us, and then we'd finally have the big shows and make money, and then we'd be rich for a week, and then we'd be broke the next week. You know, it was up and down. We, at the end of the year, for at least a few of the years, we did turn, you know, at least break even, which was really, really encouraging. But it was, you know, but until you live that day-to-day thing, it's just, it's a hard thing to do. It's a hard thing, even with such an established name and such a cool room and such great sound engineers, people that were willing to work with me. I mean, it was, you know, I could go on and on and on and on, but the folks that work with me, like Brian, Jeff Irving, all the way down to the door guys, John, Mike, a lot of people that you see at the Ramcat now, all worked at the garage. All of my bartenders, Aaron, McCully Davis, Justin Hunt, Ian Butera. I mean, a lot of these folks, they weren't just bartenders. They were Tucker's emotional support. Like they helped keep me straight, because, I mean, those weeks where I would spend $10,000, $15,000 on getting everything ready for the week, maybe 2 weeks, and then it would snow. And then I'm just sitting there going, what am I going to do? And then, you know, you wait until the next big show, and then you make your money back, and then you feel good about things for a little while. I don't know. I have a lot of thank yous that I think, you know, I still owe. I don't think I'll ever get through everybody. I'll tell you this, though. I would like to say on record that, you know, you guys, and I'm going to put you in the back seat for a second, but for sure, the Genuine, Matt and Kate and Devin, when the garage was closing, that New Year's show that we did, that final show, I don't know, you know, if they meant to, but they really pushed the promotions. They brought in Applebox Cinemas and had them come shoot and do interviews. None of these things, I didn't set anything up. And I think that the level of activity that they had me doing kind of distracted me. And I don't know if they meant to do it, but I think it was the only way that I was going to make it through. And so I will forever be in their debt and in yours, because you played that show too. You know, that last night was hard, really, really hard. And I put on a pretty good, you know, face, I think, that night, but I wasn't able to find gratitude yet. Not at that moment. At that moment, I was panicking, and because I didn't know what to do next. And I knew, you know, all I knew was there was a little baby sitting at home, and he needed me in, you know, more than one way. He didn't just, your child doesn't just need you to make money. Your child needs you to be there, to love them, to raise them, and teach them right from wrong. So
I also have to thank you for that last show. You know, I remember you telling me that there were people who kind of were like, why is this the last bill? Like, this isn't a rockabilly show or like a hard rock show.
Something we were known for.
Folkies or whatever. And from what I remember, I believe you you kind of were, you had a, you helped me get on that show, and you just helped me be in that room a lot, you know.
I just felt like you needed to be there based on our relationship, how much we'd done, how many shows we'd done together, how many times you'd opened for a band for me because I couldn't find an opener, and I'd call you a week out or maybe not even that much time and say, hey, I've got, the Future Birds are coming. Will you come open up for those guys? They're great, and you'd be like, sure, I'm on the way, and they came with a big guarantee, and I'd pay them. No offense, guys, if you're listening, and we know you are. We know the Future Birds are watching this, so Walms and those guys are watching, then if y'all's big old guarantees took money right out of Tyler's pocket, jeez.
Yeah, still does, I guess.
No, I'm just kidding. They, we all they had their stuff set up, so it's just yeah, you needed to be there. It wouldn't have been right, I don't think. And I said it back then. There's one thing I got right. If you're judged based on your last show as to how good you are, well, I would challenge you to ask all the people who attended that last show how good that last show was. I think I went out on a pretty high note.
Yeah.
I think that if that's as good as I am, then that was pretty darn good.
Yeah, it was a good one.
It was. It was hard to say Happy New Year, though. I was like, Happy New Year.
Let's see that. So you and I put out a question out to the public.
That's right.
That was like, do you have questions for Tucker? And somebody did respond to my post about it. I got a couple of questions.
Cool.
And I think one of them feeds into this. I guess right before I do this, because this will feed into it. As far as closing the garage, ultimately, I've come to understand, and I know from knowing you and from being friends with you, like a huge part of that was that it was, that you've got a son and you have an opportunity to like do something, have a career that's going to be more sustainable, not keep you out late at night and all this stuff that a nightclub does. Is that the primary reason that the garage closed, or is there more to that story for you?
That would be a very noble reason. Unfortunately, it's not the entirety of it all. The garage was financially, it struggled a lot throughout the entire time I had it. I had a partner in the beginning who went in kind of splitsies with me, and that partner was going to kind of manage the books and take care of the financials and all that, and that just didn't work out and got us in some financial trouble like almost right away. And so then I had to acquire the rest of the business from that person who I just, I'm sure they wouldn't love that I'm talking about this, but it's what it is, and it's in the past, and I'm not mad about it. And anybody who knows who I'm talking about, you shouldn't be mad about it either, because we were all just doing the best we could. And but with that being said, that really set me back right away. I mean, right away, because I had to buy it twice.
Yeah.
I had to buy the place once from Richard, and I had to buy it again from my own partner, because I couldn't just tell him to go. So I wish that had never happened. That was a real bruise, and it started off on the wrong financial foot for sure. Where we were kind of fat and happy, beginning everything, being ready to just lose for a couple of years. Well, that went away in one fell swoop, and then it was, you got to make it, and that's where I alluded to that week to week thing. It just kind of stayed week to week, and I said earlier too that it broke even, and that's breaking even without paying me. I wasn't paying myself, so. So unfortunately, to answer the question, no, we were in financial dire straits. I could not afford. I just simply. I guess there is a way I could have done it. It's not when you have a child. It's not about how much money you make in the year. It's about having consistent money. I need to pay tuition for school. I need to pay, weekly grocery bills. I need to pay. So I'm not talking about I need millions of dollars or I need to be a rich man. I just mean simply I need to have enough. And because of my education and because of my background and some of the things I've done, there were plenty of opportunities and options out there for me to make enough money and get paid every 2 weeks and have health insurance and have life insurance in case something happens to me, and just all the things that are so comfortable, I needed that. And again, excuse me, sorry about that. I'm 40 now. I don't feel 40. I've always maintained that I would do something else. I just didn't know what that was. I always thought that maybe I would reopen a club because I am good at it in my own opinion. I know some people might not think so, and that's fine. I'm open to that. But you can't just sit there and talk trash and not try. You have to try. I won't really listen to people who are critical of my work in the past who have never left their comfort zone.
Yeah.
I went out there and I did it, and I failed. And so what? Also, failure is objective, just like success is objective. It's subjective. Whatever. I may be mixing my words up here, but the point is, I gained so many friends. I gained so much love and friendship, so much support. I met so many wonderful people. I got to literally live and work a dream job, for the better part of a decade. And to me, that is a form of success. So the answer is yes, I very much left at the end because of my son, because we had him. But I don't want him to ever hear this in the future and think, oh, you gave up on your dreams because of me. Then that's not true. That is not true. I did not give up on my dreams because of him. I gave up on something that wasn't working because I needed to take care of our family. And I hope that he'll learn that lesson from me in the same way that, instead of having learned it the way I did, which was kind of the hard way. You got to take care. There's certain things you can't do anything until you take care of yourself first. And I know that sounds selfish, but it's that old, cliche kind of thing about an airplane. You got to put the mask on yourself first, or you're useless to everybody else. Well,
that's exactly what I was just thinking.
Yeah, that's what I had to do. Seriously, man, like that's what I had to do. But also to answer the question, and for the Sullivan in the future that may see this, buddy, I would have shut down anything for you. I would. That's no question.
That's sweet.
That's the truth.
No, I know it. I know that to be true. So,
all right, this is the part of the podcast where we go through my phone and look at pictures of my son. How proud I am.
Oh man. Shit. What was I just thinking? Well, as far as it being defined as a failure, and of course you're free to define it however you want. And if you feel like it failed as some sort of thing for what it was supposed to be, it's up to you. I wouldn't try to change that for you. But you think about, first off, just what a success it was while it was open, but also how it compares to other places that had music. Cranky's stopped having music so fucking quick, like a long time ago.
And I miss it still.
I do too. I loved Cranky's. The CAC came and went. It was a flash in a pan.
I remember
for the most part.
Yeah, that was cool. And the Black Lodge
came
and went, but that was
the place across the street that has been so many different places.
Oh, it was when they were doing music. It was mostly Elliot's
Review, or
then something else after that.
Yeah, I'm trying. I can't even fucking remember.
Satellite now. To begin with, or Vicky opened it up. It was a vintage. At one point, they sold vintage clothing.
I remember something like that. Yeah,
it was Lucky's. It was that place has really had. It's been a lot of places, and now, if you guys don't know what we're talking about, it's on the intersection of 7th and Trade, and it's where Hoots has a little outdoor, sipping area. Where you can get some beers and sit out there.
Which I think they'll actually, last and everything. But
I hope so.
the garage, it withstood the time a lot longer than most other places, and it fucking had music, and people paid to see music for the most part.
Yeah.
And in that way, it was a success much longer than a lot of places were, and it had a lot more of a clear vision and a mission that actually supported independent musicians and original musicians a lot longer than other places did.
Well, that was its mission.
Yeah.
I mean, when we put together a business plan, that was our mission. That the whole point was to enhance local music.
Yeah.
It was, we're going to use nationally touring artists to boost and bolster our own local economy.
Which
That
I
was
think
the goal.
I
For
think
18 years, it worked.
It helped a lot, man.
Yeah, I think so.
And in that room, I played with not only Caleb Cottle and Jonathan Luce and Kike and all my friends, and I got to play with all my dream local musicians. But I played with Roadkill Ghost Choir.
Yeah,
I
you
played
did,
with
yeah.
Lawrence.
They're low talker now. Lawrence is huge now.
They're huge now. It's crazy.
So huge. I'm so grateful that they stopped by.
Yeah,
and played a couple songs for us. And what stinks is we didn't really have much of an audience for them because nobody knew who they were.
No, nobody was there when I played, and
but they were phenomenal.
Yeah, they brought it down, but they're fucking huge now.
Huge.
I played with what's that band called? The Great Peacock.
Yeah.
played with
man,
them.
I love those guys. Oh, if Andrew, if you're listening, and I know you are, any of the guys from the Great Peacock, they made this wallet for me.
Huh.
Yeah, so I know you're watching. I'm still in that line, by the way, from a podcast I love with Sal Volcano and Chris DiStefano called Hey Babe. They
Hey
always
Babe.
they'll call out, like they'll say, the people at LaCroix, if you're listening, and we know you are. It's an ongoing joke there. So maybe they'll get mad at me for saying that, and then we'll get a whole bunch of attention for it.
Yeah, that'd be good.
That'd be good. I'll try to make Sal Volcano from them Practical Jokers angry at me.
That should work.
It's just a joke, Sal. It's what you do for a living.
You're really into podcasts. You're the
I do.
person I know that probably I think is as into podcasts as I am.
Yes, I am. It's calming for me at the end of the day to sit back, and I'm a worrier, and so I have to kind of take my brain offline before I go to bed, or else I'll just lay there and kind of worry about what I need to do next.
You do a lot of if you're a worrier and you're trying to detach, are you doing mostly comedy podcasts or any kind more serious stuff too?
It's funny. It's kind of like the way I eat. It's like breakfast food in the morning, and then so so during the day at lunchtime when I'm eating my lunch, I'll listen to something. It's usually maybe history, or and it gets much less serious as the day goes on.
Mm-hmm.
And then by the end of the day, if I'm going to listen to a podcast, it's not like I do so much work online behind a computer at work that I'm able to listen to podcasts kind of, definitely not all day, especially when I'm editing video, because, I got to listen to the audio. But, it's like I consider the comedy podcast kind of like dessert. It's just it's mindless. It's the same for me. Like I love Bob's Burgers, the animated television show.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the thing: I've seen every one of them, and so when I'm falling asleep, sometimes I'll stick an earbud in and just put it on and listen, and it doesn't keep me from falling asleep because I already have seen it.
It's not really holding your attention in a very
there's no
alert
reason
way.
to stay awake.
Yeah.
It's not like I'm gonna miss something. So. I know that's not a podcast, but that is kind of how it ends up.
It's media.
And all through the day, I can just find myself, I really love history. I didn't know how much I loved history until I started to listen to Dan Carlin, Hardcore History, and some other shows like that. I don't know. I always loved shows like Vikings and things like that. I love history stuff. I love science stuff. I love all that stuff. But meanwhile, I think it's just because it puzzles me, and it's confusing to me. And I love to try to put myself in other times, and what it must have been like to live in the 1850s, or during World War I, or just what were things like. It's just fascinating to me, and
Yeah.
it really grips my mind, and it helps me think from a different perspective. And oftentimes, especially with history podcast, I end up feeling very grateful, and also scared.
Yeah.
Scared about where we're going, where we are, but also happy I don't live back then. So it's almost like, well, maybe it's just hard all the time.
I guess before I'll take us back to the garage in a second, but before we do that, I'm interested in this right now. There is an interesting thing with like looking at where we've found ourselves in the world these days. Mm-hmm. Also, the way that things you and I have in common that we probably don't share with everybody. That way, maybe we won't share with everybody. But
I mean,
things that we're
pretty open.
Yeah, things we're interested in.
Yeah, let me cross my leg and get serious.
And the way that relates to history, and the way that might influence who we are right now and who we're becoming and shit like that. And it's like, I guess, isn't it kind of interesting and weird that we've found ourselves in a place where we kind of have to decide how open we're going to be about who we're influenced by and what we find fascinating to explore and shit like that.
Yeah, there's been several times just in this short amount of time we've been talking where I've wondered maybe if I should say something or not.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, don't say a name or don't point, you're 100% right. It is. We live in a time where you can't just say what you want. You can, but there will be consequences. Freedom of speech is certainly still alive. You just have to be willing to deal with the repercussions that might come your way. Mm-hmm. If you say something, are you going to alienate a friend group or a fan? Or, what are you going to... I heard somebody the other day, I know you don't like this. Because I won't say why, but I know you don't like this. But, I was at work the other day, and a Tyler Childers song came on. I don't remember which one. I can't remember which song. But anyway, I just looked over at the guy and I said, who put this on? And he was like, I don't know, it's on Pandora or something. I said, this is Tyler Childers. He was like, yeah. I said, this is a great song. He's a fantastic musician. He was like, yeah, he's a Democrat. I was like, who cares? I didn't say anything about that. I said his name, and I said he was great at music. Do you agree or disagree? That's kind of all that we need to do here, and then carry on. I don't, it's just, I didn't need to know that he was a Democrat. And plus, where'd you get your information from? Did you call his mama? Like,
yeah.
I don't know. I don't believe I've ever met Tyler, but that Tyler, other Tyler. What should we call him? Tyler C.
Yeah, let's call it Tyler, like Diet Tyler or something.
Yeah, Diet Tyler. I've never met Diet Tyler. I don't think. If I have, it's probably in passing, maybe at a show, watching somebody else. But we didn't, he didn't play at the garage while I was there or anything like that. But, I just couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that played into music.
Yeah.
I was like, why are we having that conversation?
Like, yeah, you've been watching these. You know how I feel, and you also know me, and you know how I feel. I find it really absurd that, like, I mean, I think the arts is a really important area that we try to relate to each other, and it's that place where we experience something and we be like, oh my God, like this was my experience of it. What is yours like? And they're like, oh, this is my experience of it. And it's like, holy shit, they're different. And like, oh, let's compare them. And that's all being shut down by this like culture war of left and right. That's so on the surface and kind of unimportant in comparison, in my opinion.
No, you're 100% right, man. And it's probably why I listen to so much history stuff, because I just love to hear about how things used to be. And the more and more you listen, the more and more you realize that things aren't so different from the way that they were. I don't know, man. I do not mind answering questions or talking about this stuff. I just, overwhelmingly, it all comes back to one final thought, which is, I wish that we could all just be a little bit more open-minded and not, we're not on different teams here. It's not Democrat versus Republicans necessarily. I think it's just extreme people. I think I know I'm probably the 10 millionth person who said this on the podcast, but it's the small amount of extremists that make the most noise, and they give each party a bad look. I know a lot of really good Republicans. I know a lot of really great Democrats. I know a lot of people on both sides that are fantastic people that would get along smashingly if they were to meet. But they'll never meet just because they don't share the same belief systems. And the thing is, it's just, they're both smart. They're both, it's a bummer. It's a real bummer. And I think it was President Eisenhower said that anything too far right's in the gutter. Anything too far left is in the gutter.
Well, yeah.
The only usable surface is right down the middle of the road.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we could all use a little taste of that right now and stop being so, I'm making it sound so easy, but I believe that it actually is that easy. It's a mindset. It's up to you as an individual to change your mind about how you're going to react to people, instead of firing off venom and hatred and sit on social media all day long just looking for somebody to disagree with. It's disgusting.
I mean, according to some experts, what you said is true, though. It's like sometimes I worry that that's not the case. I mean, I guess when you, like, in history terms, in the first half of the 20th century, it was a minority of the population that found itself either aligned with a certain party of Germany or a certain party of Russia.
Mm-hmm.
And what was going on in those communities, either in the 1910s and 20s or in the 1930s and 40s.
Yeah.
And that was a minority of the world population. But in those communities, it was very dense and it was very effective. And I think I sometimes reference Winston as this place where all these people are. And I'm in Rural Hall. I'm like surrounded by super moderate people
mm-hmm.
that they don't talk like a lot of my friends do. But this is why this is why I make reference to Winston so much, because I feel like there's a density in Winston that is both of these things that I'm worried about. There's a density in Winston of there's a higher population
mm-hmm.
of people who have the advantage to probably be able to be involved in the arts and be involved in things that
mm-hmm.
actually unify people and develop culture.
Mm-hmm.
But that is also the hotbed of where this sort of like this heat around this thing that makes difference between people, this ideological space that they make. That's where it's being bred and being celebrated and being passed around from person to person. And what's worse is, to go with the last thing you said, I think those folks, they think that they have free thought themselves to this place.
Right.
They think that, like, oh, I'm just on the right side of belief, and so it's everybody else that needs to do the work to get to where I am, and that's
unwilling to open their mind up to hear a different opinion without getting upset.
Yeah, and I don't know what to do about that, because like that whole idea of individualism, I think they think that they're in touch with it. I think they have no idea how far off the mark that they might be. And I'm not saying this as some kind of individuality expert. I'm just saying this as like a flawed observer that could also be wrong. But like,
same here.
From what I can tell, the common thing I see among the people that we're describing is that they all are a mouthpiece for something left of the middle that's pretty heated right now.
I would agree, and I don't mean that with, for the folks that might hear that and get upset about that. I would just simply say to you, you are the folks that taught me to be open-minded. I am from here. I am surrounded with extremely conservative people every single day. I live in downtown Winston, and I work in Pofftown. So I wake up in an extraordinarily liberal neighborhood every morning, and I drive to an extremely conservative workplace every day, and I see an extreme on both ends. And like I said earlier, I see good in both places.
Yeah.
And I see horrible in both places. The horrible mostly comes from the fact that you're not willing to be wrong. You're so smart. And if I hear one more time, I swear I might snap. as much as things have changed for me in the last 4 years, I still can get fired up about it myself too, which wouldn't be a good example for what I try to preach. But, you know, if I hear one more person say, you got to do your own research, you know, it just,
Yeah.
okay, well, hold on. Let me call Duke. We're going to get 45,000 people to participate in a double-blind study, and we're going to get to the bottom of this. Now, let me borrow $200 million, and then we're going to get started, and I'll do my own research. No. You're telling me to do my own research when the research that you've done is from, you're telling me you can Google better than me?
Right. Right.
Or that your aunt's Facebook page is
more accurate than
more
your
accurate
information,
than my aunt's, you know, like I just don't buy it. And I try to, you know, my wife would disagree with this, but I don't always think I'm right. And in my own personal belief system, like I have gotten really better. I'm not saying I've been this way my whole life. God knows I have not. But, you know, through this and through COVID and all that stuff, like I'm a very anxious person. So I was kind of built for COVID. You know, when they did the lockdown thing, I was like, I've been training for this my whole life.
Yeah.
The anxieties didn't get to me so much. I had a lot of time to think. I had a lot of time to look at politics and news in a way that I'd never looked at it before like that. You know, I just like, you know, but now isn't it a shame that you have to come home and watch two competing news outlets, you know, to see what's actually going on?
I mean,
if it's even a real thing.
Okay, wait. Okay. First, I really like what you said, because Winston was the same thing for me. Like the downtown Winston-Salem community was it just like opened me up in this new way.
They're the ones who taught me how to see, like, there's so much more. You know, when I was young, I traveled the world playing sport.
Right.
And that really opened my mind to even having my mind open. And I'm not trying to be deep. I'm just saying that you take a kid from Pofftown, North Carolina, and you put him on a team with, you know, 20 plus other kids that are from every other city and every other state in the country, and send them to, you know, all over the world, and you make friends and you share music and you share ideas, and you know, it's a very diverse, you know, sports are very diverse. We had, you know, people, you know, all different, you know, the only thing I never got, I just never had any women on my soccer team. That was the only thing. I never got to learn women from their perspective, but I got to learn, you know, people from Africa. I got to learn people from New Zealand, people from Ireland, people from UK, everywhere in the world. I got to play with people in school, and then in the U.S. I got to play with people from New York to Texas, back up to Portland and down, you know, from everywhere in the country, all over. And those people really opened my mind. It was like, oh, there's so much more.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's so much more. And then when I came back to Winston, the first thing I did was look for a place downtown, because that's where the bars were.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to be close to the bars so I could just walk home. Get drunk and walk home, not get in trouble. And it was, in fact, those people, the liberal arts community of downtown Winston-Salem, that taught me to be open-minded and accepting. And they're the ones who taught me that. And now I feel like, and it's you know, again, I'm not going to fall subject to the thing I just pointed out, which is the small group of people that are the loudest, you know. But, you know, there's some of it's undeniable that some of the folks that I used to really look up to, I see them just hissing on social media and just looking for fights and posting things on purpose
all the time
to make people angry or to just get a reaction out of somebody. Those are the same people that helped me open my mind, and I'm looking at them going, what happened?
Yeah.
What, you know, I didn't idolize you, but I looked up to you.
Yeah.
And now you're doing this, and it's so see, I don't care if you have conservative views or if you have liberal views. I really don't care. I tend to be a little more liberal, but I have a lot of conservative values that I hold near and dear to my heart, and I don't feel like that's a bad thing, because I don't want bad for anybody.
I'm with you, man. And I mean, I really related to that. I coming from, because I mean, I was born and raised part of the time in Northside Winston, and that's like home. That's like my deepest form of home.
Yeah, me
which
too.
is, that's a whole different neighborhood than where I'm at and where I grew up the other half of my time in King and around Rule Hall and stuff, and around Stokes County.
People look at you funny if you tell them you're from King or that you went to North these days.
Yeah,
They do me when they're like, "Where'd you graduate from?" I say North, and it's like, it's all right. I'm not gonna stab you. Like
it's a different environment
for sure.
So Winston was a place that really unlocked me as a person, and I was like,
so welcoming at first.
Yeah, sort of. Well,
for me.
Yeah, I don't know if it was as welcoming, but for me, it was just being exposed to more people, and just getting to experience this thing, this way of being that was sort of embracing of something different and not so rigidly. I also come from a pretty rigid religious background, and so my whole identity was kind of built around the idea of tradition. And even from a young age, I was kind of pushing against the loyalty to tradition. So Winston was a great environment for me because I just fell right into it, and it felt like I was falling right into, wow, there's people down here that don't just build their whole sense of identity around tradition that's pretty old-fashioned. But yes, slowly but surely, it started to become more and more clear that that same system of belief that builds up traditional beliefs that kind of put barriers between people. They just have a version of that has different characteristics, but it still puts barriers between people. And
it's, you got to be careful. You got to be really, really careful.
When I was
these small groups, though, a small ideology can turn into a world war.
It can. Yeah. When I stopped working downtown after COVID, I got a job.
I remember that. I talked to you about the time.
Yeah. And I got a job with a little log cabin construction company. That picture behind you, that's a log cabin my grandfather built that I was raised in.
That's insane.
And he was a great builder, and my dad and my uncles, they like build shit. That was a skill I wanted to have. So
rightfully so.
It just kind of fell into my lap, and I was like, okay, I'll do that for a while. I'll learn how to build shit. I had a lot of fun doing that. It was super dangerous, and I got to live dangerously, and I got to experience some crazy shit. But also I got to experience what it's like to be around the type of conservative that is really
that gives
difficult
conservative
to
a bad
be around.
name.
Yeah. And it's like experiencing, and we're talking like being around a guy who has been in prison, and so his worldview comes with a language that you use in prison, and he expresses that like it's just every other day, because for him, every single day is sort of like, I could go back to prison and have to live by this code again, and have to live by these rules again.
Yeah.
This identity-focused, identity-based sort of affiliation with me and other people, and separation between me and other people.
Loud and clear.
You know what I'm saying?
Loud and clear. Yeah, I mean, they'll say those words, and you're going, and meanwhile to them, it's just like, no, man, like this. The truth is that maybe they may not be that bad a person.
Yeah.
It's just that's the
most uncomfortable part about it, is that they might not be, and yet there's this really pervasive. Yeah, they have this way of existing that's super uncomfortable.
Yeah, I deal with that sometimes.
And I went from being sort of like the most conservative person on a team in Winston-Salem, the most conservative person on a pretty much all liberal team, to being absolutely the most liberal person on an all conservative team.
That's where I am right now.
And it was shocking, and that revealed to me, well, this is why these extremes exist, clearly. You have this really extreme personality, and of course there's going to be an antithesis to that's going to represent the need to balance that out. But for me, it was very obvious. I don't want to be either of those extremes. I don't want to be, in the process of fighting these two extreme battles. I think it's probably a healthy balance for people to strive to exist in a way that it doesn't encourage anything bad on either side, but it it doesn't put you at odds with the average person, you know?
Right.
That you can just coexist with people.
Yes.
I think is the goal.
I couldn't agree more. I do it, a lot now.
Mm.
And it's interesting because my workplace, in the office or the administrative, buildings where all the VPs and all the, top brass of our company, where that is, those folks are, they tend to be a little more open-minded. And then there's the other folks who are the heart and soul of the company, which are the fabricators, the welders, the electricians, the painters, these guys, and even they're split, right? But even though they're split, the majority is conservative. And even though the majority is conservative, there's only a handful of them that come out there and talk about it, because most people have enough sense, not to talk about it at the workplace. When I was being raised, my mother always taught me, that, who I vote for is none of your business.
Mm-hmm.
That's private. I think it should still be that way. Now people identify themselves with who they voted for.
No kidding.
They taught me. They took time out of their day, life to teach me not to talk about those things. It's no one's business.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I sometimes I wish that you and I could just sit here and preach and tell everybody to take their cell phone out and take a hammer to it and go outside and walk through the woods. And, I mean this kind of seriously. If you walked out in the woods and you heard a guy screaming and it was just you and him, and he like tree fell on him or something, and his leg's broken, he needs help or he's going to die. If you don't help him, he'll die. Because nobody's got cell phones. But he's got on a MAGA hat. What are you going to do? You going to let him die because he likes Donald Trump?
Right.
Well, who's the bad person now? You let a man die because he wore a hat. And what if you found out later that he lost a bet?
Yeah.
Run that through your noodle, you know what I mean? Like, look, I'm no expert. Don't listen to me or do whatever you want. I'm getting older and I'm starting to see things a little more clear, and there's a lot less manic energy in me since I left the garage, since I had to close the garage. That job was 24/7. You think you want to be an entrepreneur. You think you want to do this. You think you want to do that. And then you start, and then you realize that, like, there's no freedom. There's no weekends. There's no time. It's 7 days a week, nonstop. It needs your attention all the time. And because of that, and because of how I was just a year sober and getting into this, and then I filled my time with that, and I occupied. And then my biggest cardinal rule was I identified myself as the garage. I could post. The garage had tens of thousands of followers on Facebook, and probably over 5,000, 6,000 on Instagram, and it goes on and on. I could post a picture or a video of you playing to the garage, and it would get a relatively decent amount of views or whatever. And I could post a picture of you and me hanging out in the green room, and it would get 4 times the engagement.
Right.
And it was because I had put so much into promoting myself as this person, as this character, as this, marketing tool. And that was one of my big mistakes. That was my biggest mistake, probably. It's why it was so hurtful. When I stopped playing soccer, it didn't hurt as much. I'd never really loved soccer. I was just good at it. And so I kept doing it. I just kept doing it. And it took me places. And I liked that. I liked that it got me into school. I liked that I got to travel to other countries. I liked, girls, and I liked admiration from everybody. My parents were proud of me. My brother was proud of me. I have an older brother who's quite exceptional in many ways. And he was always proud of my efforts with that too, because hey man, it's really cool to go to a game, any sports game, and see your sibling, kicking ass. It's like, that's my brother right there, the one that just scored and did all that stuff like that. He's my brother. So there's pride in that, and I felt it, and I loved it. I loved that. I never fell in love with, like, I still don't really watch it. So everybody's always like, why didn't you coach? Why didn't you do this? I was like, I wasn't paying attention. Y'all have got me messed up. I was just good at it. Didn't mean I loved it. It was so much harder for me to let go of the garage than it was for me to let go of my soccer career, only because I identified myself as the garage guy.
Yeah.
As opposed to when I played soccer, I did not identify as, I identified myself, but I was me, but I was on a team. It was a team sport, so I was a part of a team.
That's interesting. I think the way that connects, I don't know if this is what you're going for or not, but I think the way that connects with the previous part of our conversation is the difference between, what I hear is the difference between the team identity thing that people are engaging in on this political spectrum versus the missed opportunity that they have to focus rather on building their individuality. I think that's where it connected. But so I think
so. I'll take credit for that. I'm not 100% sure. I did kind of go off in the deep, but
it's still, I think there's overlap. I don't want to take away from that part of the conversation, but I meant for us to to ask these questions, and I don't want to leave them hanging. Okay, first question, and you can do this quickly if you want to.
Sure.
They're both two-sided. What was the hardest part about running the garage, and what was the most fulfilling part?
Oh, man. The hardest part... So, I don't know exactly how to answer that. I think if you mean like the most difficult part of the work, what was the hardest thing to do? I'd say, keeping track of your finances, keeping track of your, bookkeeping, all the difficult, those are the things that I didn't have any experience with. I'm not a financially minded person. So accounting, payroll, insurance, keeping ABC permits, all the paperwork, that was hardest for me because I hate doing it. I got it done because, I have the ability to work hard when I'm passionate about something, but I got it done, but I did not like doing it. But overall, the hardest part about running the garage was putting everything you got into a night and nobody coming. Yeah. That's the hardest part. And watching the band, get up there and play to you like there's 100 people in the room and see them just do it anyway. It was inspiring and sad at the same time because there's nobody in the room. They're playing to you and the bartenders, but they played like there was 100 because you're paying them. So it's like, that sucked the most. So that's kind of a combined like hardest thing, and the most fulfilling. Watching young artists grow, watching artists like yourself find themselves, maybe offer a critique that's helpful. I helped a lot of people with, so the connections made between artist and me were definitely it. I made connections with people on a sobriety level. The connections that I made with the artists is the most fulfilling thing because I'm still friends with. I just went and saw Mipso at Ramcat, and I'm never sure if they're going to remember me, and but I still hang around till the show's over, to buy some merch, shirt, something, and here comes Joe. He's like, "What are you doing, boy? Come over here!" And he gives me a hug, and I'm like, "You do remember me, And then my son loves All Them Witches. I'm sure that most people who know me and music don't want to hear about that either right now, and that's fine. But their lead singer, his name is Parks, and he met my son when he was just an infant, and we will communicate here and there. And so they came to the Ramcat not too long ago, and I got to, my son has a favorite song by them. It's called 41. It's a very positive song, even though it may, if you're a folky kind of person, you turn that song on, you're going to immediately turn it off because it's pretty heavy, but my son likes it. And so right when I took him up there for sound check, the band started to play the song because they saw him. And so, I mean, where I'm getting to is those connections are still, like, to this day, I mean, my 4-year-old walked up to a giant music venue, and the headlining act that's just sold 1,000 tickets sees his little body and little face and starts playing a song for him during their sound check just for him.
Yeah.
Just for him. That's a gift that only I can give my son because of the relationship that I developed with those artists.
Yeah.
And so I'm still very close with them. I'm still very close with you.
Yeah.
And I call you for no reason at all sometimes. I call you just because I need somebody to talk to.
I think our relationship might have gotten deeper since the garage closed.
I think so. I agree. I think our relationship has grown since the music stopped because we were able to, I don't know this is the truth, but I think one of the reasons might be because you take one of the complicated factors of our relationship out. So no matter what, part of our relationship always was, when's the next show? Who am I playing with? How are we going to grow the crowd? How are we going to do this? And so since that's gone, now we just are human beings on earth.
Not to mention taking out anything about money between us, too.
That's right.
Like,
There's no more money between us. Like,
that's kind of convenient. That leaves us to just be able to, like, I don't have to look at you as a buyer. You don't have to look at me as a thing.
We don't have to. I don't have to go and say, look, Tyler, I'm going to give you blah, blah, blah dollars versus, 40% of the room on Saturday night. And you're sitting here going, all right, well, you better do your end to promote. I'm going to do mine. You better do yours. And it just all that's gone. And so I think we were fast friends anyway. Mm-hmm. And so when you take out the complicating things, you take out the complicating factors, now I can just enjoy your music. I can just enjoy your friendship and not have to think about, like, because, I mean, if you only knew how it made me feel to not pay you sometimes, like, I mean, it's not like, that was uncommon, right? I mean, like, some bands that were out of town that I didn't know, like, I wasn't buddies, they didn't know whether I was good for it. You did.
Yeah. So
there were nights where I could say, I can't do anything for you tonight, but I'm going to get you over here. And I'd like to think that I held up my end of the bargain, but I couldn't do that with some of the touring bands. So, I mean, some of the touring bands that were coming through for a percentage of the door or just whatever it was, I mean, they felt bad because they felt like they were robbing me. Like, I'd barter a deal with them or their agent for like $200 to play a show, and we'd do the show and nobody'd come. And they'd look at me and there's some bands that would be like, give me my money. And there's some bands be like, man, you don't have to. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Yeah, I do.
I remember nights like that.
You're
where
on
it was
the road.
Like I just remember nights where I could tell that it wasn't working to your advantage, but you were still paying me. And I was like, I felt bad about that because some nights, especially given how much I played at the garage, it was like sometimes I couldn't tell if I was hurting nights or helping because, like, I was there so fucking much. And anyway, I just remember some nights where you paid me where I was like, I don't feel like he should be paying me, and but you still did,
Well, you have to. I mean, or what good are you? Like, like, at least put gas in my tank. That's how I feel about it. If I was in the band, at least give me $20.
So all of this stuff brings a question to mind. There are people you and I follow who are connected to the Comedy Store. We always can hear about the Comedy Store through podcasts and stuff. And that scene out there, from what I understand, a bunch of comedians, they have like this place where they can go sort of really often at night in LA and like hang out in the green room and like do their thing, go on stage, and there's an audience built in. Why is that impossible to have for a music scene, to have like a place where, people that do this craft go there in the evenings and like do their thing, and there's an audience there to see that? Like, I don't know of any place other than the Troubadour in LA might have used to have been that way, but I don't even know of other venues. I guess I've heard maybe Rockwood in New York might be that, but anyway, the question is, Why can't we have that in Winston?
Well, we have zero tourism, whether the tourism department likes to say it or not. I mean, yeah, we might get people that come by the busload to see Old Salem, but we don't get. There's no. What are you coming to Winston for? You know. So there's no tourism, so that hurts because there's no star power to go along with that. So if you have star power like they do, like if you've got before we moved to, Austin, if you've got a Joe Rogan, or if you've got a Theo Vaughn, or like a really funny comedian, or Tom Segura, we both you like it. I love it.
Yeah, I've gotten really.
He's so
I
great.
listen to his podcast way too much.
Oh, I'm on the way home from here, I'm going to finish up listening to Two Bears.
Yeah, I started that this morning.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I started it, and I've been busy working since. And so, when you have Tom Segura going up every night, and David Spade might drop by, and so you've got that, but then all of a sudden you've got this booming, tourism. You got people coming from all around the world. And also just a sheer volume of people in that area. They have so many people that think they're stand-up comedians that they're going to come, and half the audience are probably people that are about to try to get up in their smaller room. I just don't think it's possible in a place like this.
Well, I think everything you're saying is right. Like the fact that there are big names that are commonly seen.
You just never know who's going to pop up.
But from what I understand, this is true for a lot more comedy clubs throughout the country, like in other places, like in Minneapolis and now in Austin, where I keep hearing that Rogan might start a club there or whatever.
Yeah, I heard that too.
It's a common thing in comedy clubs for it to operate this way. Why? What is the difference with comedy clubs? It's super not unusual, for there to be like 3 big acts on one show, and they'll like do this thing together, and there's comedians around each other all the time.
Yeah,
in music, it's supporting each other, participating in the craft.
Yeah.
In music, it's like, okay, we got 2 bands on the bill, and like that's all you're gonna experience,
yeah.
and there's no cross pollination and shit like that as much.
Well, I mean, so what does that look like? So a comedian goes up and does, half hour, and then Dave Chappelle shows up and says, I'm taking the rest of the night.
Right.
And I'm going to talk for 4 hours, and there's nothing you can do. But here's the thing. The bar is happy because the place is cram-packed. They couldn't be selling more drinks, so they're successful, and I should be easy with this because during COVID, they've had it hard, and they may not be doing as well as we think, but historically speaking.
Yeah. I'm thinking just the lay of the land. You get what I mean?
Absolutely. I'm not talking about post-COVID. I'm talking about just on a flat surface if you look at it.
Yeah.
They had this thing where, you never know who's going to drop in, and that's kind of the appeal for an audience member. It's almost like if you and I went to LA, which I'm not going right now.
No.
But if we were to go, I imagine one of the things that you and I would want to do is go to the Comedy Store. We want to go to the store, and we want to go, and it wouldn't matter what night. Honestly, would it matter?
No.
No. I mean, as long as we're there, we're going to go. Hey, while we're here, let's go. Let's get the selfie, and let's get the hell out of here. Me and T-Nell at the thing, and who knows, maybe we get to meet one of our favorite comedians. I think Andrew Schultz, he's a New York comedian. I think he's brilliant. I think that guy's a genius, and he's one of the ones that, he's the first probably New York comic that was notable. He may not be the first one to do it, but he's the first one that had a big platform and told everybody what he was doing. He's like, you guys can fight each other all you want and lose and lose and lose until you just are just another New York comedian not doing anything. But I'm starting this podcast with my friends, and we're going to support each other because I'm looking at LA, and those dudes are starting podcasts, pumping each other up, having each other on, spreading the love and spreading the wealth, and they're putting it out there. And the next thing you know, you got a guy like Tom Segura who goes from a club comedian, in a year, he went from a club comedian to theaters. Mm-hmm. And it's because of his podcast. Yeah. It's because he announces, I'm going to be playing this weekend at blah, 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 and it sells out 30 minutes later because he's got 700,000 followers on his podcast because it's so funny. Yeah. And they're all, that culture they created, people are loving it. And So what that looks like as musicians is like, okay, think about the logistics. You don't just move one guy off stage, clean his microphone off, put him on. You got to rig everything up. You got to bring out you got your sound guy. And it's not just a sound guy to make sure that your audio is okay through the speakers in the room. I mean, it's a full mix, a full band mix. So that logistically already doesn't work to have that many different people. And also, name a big band that you'd like to see. I mean, the Avett Brothers aren't just going to pop in. It's not like any given night the Avett Brothers are going to pop in the garage. You can't. There is no place with an atmosphere where bands are just hanging around that are of that caliber. Exactly. Most bands of that caliber are on a tour, a fixed tour. Now, they may pop in their hometown, but this ain't their hometown.
Yeah.
So.
Well, obviously, yeah. I guess
I don't know. I mean, is it impossible? Absolutely not. Everything's possible. But is it probable in my mind? No.
I think that's part of the reason that I'm enjoying doing a solo act right now, just me and a guitar, is is a little bit more of that, just the rawness that stand-up comedians have, just standing on stage with a microphone.
Yeah. It's scary, right?
Scarier.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Like I have I can't lean on other people to fill space,
Wrong note can't be blamed on somebody else.
Definitely not. And I used to be able to, if I lost a word, if I lost a place in a song, I could kind of look at John and be like, play, or whatever. And we could fill space. I could cover that all up. But now it's like, if I don't find the word, I'm totally by myself.
Yeah. You're bombing at this point. Yeah.
But I mean, you're right. Everything you're describing is why it's different, but I think the camaraderie around the craft is what I wish that musicians could start to mimic more, because I think what you just described about that stuff in LA, the way that the comedians have worked together, and really like multiple comedians have built their success off of the exposure from Rogan's podcast.
And now Andrew Schultz, but I didn't finish. I realized I didn't finish that. Andrew Schultz, he went out to LA, went on every single one of his favorite comedians' podcasts. And next thing you know, he's the biggest thing in New York now. And he's one of the biggest comedians in the world. He got a Netflix special right away. He got this, it blew him up immediately. All he did was go out there and mingle with them. Yeah. That's it. And so the way they support, I've never seen anything like that. I think that there's a realness among comedians where it's not strange for people to see them in their natural element, because that's what they do. With musicians, I think they like the mystery a little bit more. And I could think of, if some of my favorite musicians started a podcast, I don't think I'd be as likely to listen to it as I am to listen to a comedian's podcast. No, we're not funny.
Yeah.
We don't,
and I don't think of them the same way.
I don't want to hear, I don't want to hear why you wrote the song about your dead grandma. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? That shit's sad. I'm not trying to get sad. I'm trying to get happy. I want to laugh.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's I'm drawn to comedy podcasts, especially at the end of the night, to go all the way back to that, because it's light. I don't have to think hard to understand. It's just jokes. Yeah. And even if I just, and I want to laugh. I want to be happy. I want to feel, and in this world these days, comedy's one of those things where, music and comedy are all I've got. I need music and I need comedy to make me feel okay. Mm-hmm. Because I'll be damned if there's nothing in the world that makes me feel as happy as music. There's nothing in the world that makes me feel as, happy as comedy. There's just no, and I can't do either. I can't do it on my own, and I'm glad I can't do either. And the reason that I'm glad that I can't do either is because I can enjoy it. I can truly enjoy it. I know just enough about how to play music to know when you're doing something hard and to know when you're just cruising.
Yeah.
But I get to enjoy it either way. It's just fun for me. I just get to enjoy it. I get to be a fan.
Well, with all that said, I think that we could take some notes probably about why that model works so well for the cross-promotion thing.
I definitely
I think
do.
we could, explore that a little further.
There's no reason that if you could get, so again, back to those open-minded people that helped me become open-minded. They're open-minded until you take their spot. Yeah. And then once you take their spot or you mess with their money, you find out who people are. You find out who people really are when you mess with their money.
Oh, sure.
And so if it comes down to this, like, musician XY has always loved you and has always been so nice to you and always been so kind and such a fan and so gracious, and then one night they're like, you know, Tucker at the garage bumped me and put Tyler up because he has more fans. You know, I hate that guy.
Yeah.
It goes from hate. It's like, wow, how dare you? You know, and that happens. That's real. That I've seen. And so a business owner makes a business decision and says, I got to put somebody up who draws a crowd. And the other person goes, I hate that other person.
Mm-hmm.
Well, hate me. Don't hate them.
Or don't hate anybody.
Or don't hate anybody. Support. Come show up.
All right. We have been going for a while. I want to ask you
sorry.
this question, and then we will start to wrap it up.
Okay.
So this is the other contributed question I got.
Thanks for the questions, by the way. This is cool.
For sure. We should answer the other question you got as well. Okay, so first this one. Is there anything you would have done differently in regards to the garage? And is there anything that you wouldn't have changed for the world?
Phew. Sorry. It's a good question. And I've not thought about that, you know, in a while.
Yeah.
Well, I keep going somewhere where I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings,
Mm-hmm.
you know, so I'm trying to bounce around that. I think that I would have relied on myself a little bit more. I think that I could have had a little more faith in me. I think I didn't trust myself enough to handle certain things, so I sought help, and that in a way shackled me to that help that I was getting, and instead of, that's a hard thing to digest. I'll tell you one thing I know for sure that I would have changed: my behavior toward the end. Had I had control of it, I would have liked to have held myself with more grace, more dignity, more pride. But I was a dead man walking, and I felt like everybody, you know, it was my own feelings. No one probably really thought this, but certainly no one was happy to see me go down. At least I don't think so. I'm sure there's probably one or two, you know, but I just don't think that I handled, you know, I was emotionally in a very hard place towards the end. I'd just become a dad. All I wanted to do was focus on that, and I still had the garage was not even close to figured out. I would have acted differently. I would have behaved differently. If I had it to do again, I would have not made myself the center of it all. I would have made the garage the star of the show, and I would have not been so greedy about the attention for me. You see, as a former athlete, I was used to having eyeballs on me, and I was used to hearing the roar of the crowd, and I wanted it again, and I was chasing it. And I don't think you ever once you've had it, I don't think you ever stop chasing it. You're always going to want it, because it feels, if you've never had 1,000 people cheer for you, you just don't know what it's like. You don't know what it's like. You don't understand why. And so, because I had no musical gift, I decided to make myself such a character that when that the bands would bring me up on stage after their set to bow with them. You know what I mean? And be like, hey, you know, and give it up for Tucker. Yeah. You know, and that was the big pat on the back that I needed. It's so silly, it's so childish, and so stupid. And I wish I'd never made it about me, and I wish I'd kept the garage as the star, you know. That's it. And then the second one was,
what would you have not changed for anything?
The room. The room was never going to change, no matter how many people told me the bathrooms were disgusting and gross and all this, you know, which they were, I'm aware. The room was something special. The room had that, it was just such a vibe. And it was, you know, the realest of the real musicians that I ever worked with would show up to that place, and they'd look at the outside and go, oh my God, what has our booker got us into?
Mm.
And then they'd walk in and go, oh, yeah, okay, this is my kind of place. No one can tell me that Brian Daub isn't the best sound engineer in town. He is, and every band that's touring through Winston-Salem and playing at the Ramcat, I know that you have a sound engineer. I know you have a front of the house person. I would strongly urge you to listen to what Brian has to say. I would never have changed the way that we, ultimately in the long run. I know I just talked about making the garage the star and me not the star, but even with that being said, I still ran the place with dignity and pride. I did run it. We were honest. We didn't lie. We gave people money back when the refunds were due. We treated people with respect. We literally gave away. I gave it away, basically. I was unwilling to let people leave without pay most times. And it put me under. It put me under. But I wouldn't change it for the world because, I made over 1,000 people feel special, and I hopefully I helped them. And if I didn't help them, then at least I was one stop along their bumpy road that didn't feel so rough. They came to me and they felt welcomed, they felt loved, they felt it, respected and admired. So I wouldn't change that, and I wouldn't change the, I don't know exactly what. There's so many different things about that question. It's not just a linear question. Like, you can't just say, oh, well, I wouldn't have painted it blue. It's just like there's a lot of things I wouldn't have changed. There's a lot. It was the garage was built for the music. It was built by musicians for musicians, and it was built around the music and held. That was my favorite quote. It was built around music and held up by the posters. Mm-hmm. And it was that kind of place. And I'm proud of what we did there. I'm afraid that some of this might be coming off as a woe is me, sad story, when the truth is I've got nothing now but really great memories. I just feel like people did have a little bit of wonder, like, did I give up or did it fail? Did I quit doing it because I had a kid, or did I fail? And the truth is a little bit of both about the kid and the financial troubles. It was not financially working. But other than that, everything else I would have kept the same, because the experiences that we had they'll last me for the rest of my life. And hopefully I'll do something else in music, I'm just 40. I'm not dead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think for the hell of it, we should go ahead and answer the other question.
Oh, yeah. The first submission we got?
The first submission we got.
And this first submission is from Dare Tharpe, my mother. I love you, Mom. I know that, and I know you're watching. But she said, how did you and Tyler meet, or when did you and Tyler meet, and did it have anything to do with music?
Yeah.
And the short answer is yes, Mom.
Yeah.
It had everything to do with music. And when? It was right after you did like the Crankies thing. You won some singer-songwriter contest.
I probably won the shuffle.
Yeah, you won
a mixed media contest that used to go on at Crankies. Well, I'll tell you.
How long have you and Tyler been friends?
Mm-hmm.
Was music a factor?
Music was definitely how we met, because
for sure.
I had played one time. Richard booked me one time at the garage right before you took it over. And honestly, for me, I was like, sweet, now I've got an end of the garage. And then I heard you took it over, and I was like, fuck.
Now I got to meet some new asshole.
Yeah, I was like, maybe this guy won't even book me. Like, fuck. And so I just did whatever I could.
I'd seen you play. I already knew who you were.
Well, I didn't even know. But I imagine the first time we met was probably at the garage, and you were like, oh, I'm from Poptown and shit like that. And that was after. That was probably in
2013, 2012.
I think sooner. I think
maybe.
Well, you said you bought it in 2012.
Right.
So, yeah, it would have
Had to
been.
be 2012.
It would have been then.
Yeah.
All I know is right when I played there the first time, I had already put out one CD, I think, by then.
Yeah, I
hadn't
remember.
put out my second one.
Yeah, they had the Christmas in Winston.
Yeah.
It had, what are some other...
Northern Carolina.
Northern Carolina.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that album. We still listen to your Christmas song. My son loves your Christmas. He has no idea what it's about. He doesn't know, like, you know, he doesn't get the deeper meaning at his age right now, but he just likes that it says Christmas and Winston-Salem, and he likes your voice, and so he just likes to hear that. Yeah, so there you go, Mom. We met probably around 2012. Tyler just won some music contest, and then Richard booked him, and then I knew you were already on the list, you know. And Richard told me about you. He was like, I think they called you the King Boys.
Yeah, me and Matt.
Yeah, like the King. He's like, I'm telling you, man. You know, Richard. He's like, look, man, there's these King guys, these kids from King, and they're doing it. They're doing it. I was like, all right. So as soon as I met you and Matt, I remember meeting both of you and going, they're from King?
Right.
Says who? You know, I've met people from King. These guys aren't from King.
Yeah.
You didn't have a massive truck with rebel flags hanging out the rear end of it. So I was like, no way. Matt came in with a big smile and his giant, pretty blue eyes. He's like, I'm like, you're not the kind of king I've ever seen. Where's the scars on your face, boy?
Well, man, I suppose with all this said, well, first of all, just I'm very appreciative of the time that you had the garage.
Me too.
It was a there he is.
He's kamikaze. He's coming at you.
It was a great time in my life. It was it was a shaping time in my life, and it was super important to me, and it was great to have lived that with you.
Thank you.
You and I have talked about some things that, I mean, my audience is small. I don't think it makes a difference, but I don't suppose we have anything to reveal to the world right now. But
no, just other than the fact that I think it would be a good thing. If you're listening to this, there's a chance you know me. Not to be discouraging or anything like that. Hopefully the podcast gets lit up, you know, but not because of me, just in general. But if you're listening to this, there's a chance you know me. And if you do, then you know that I talk and I talk and I talk. And so it sure would be fun to host a podcast myself. One great thing about what happened with the garage is that now I'm bulletproof. Like, you can't really hurt my feelings with your words. So if there is anybody that feels like, you know, feel free to leave a comment about whether or not you think that I would be good at hosting my own podcast. And if you think so, awesome. If you don't think so, please tell me that too. And also, you know, there's a few things in the world that I have, you know, it's like I post on Instagram, you know, those three things are really the 10,000 hours, except for, you know, I'd love to talk about sobriety. Again, I'm not really one to give advice, but I'd love to there's a lot of musicians that I've worked with in the past, and they got sober, and we talked a lot. There's a lot of people in town that have come to me for, you know, questions like, how'd you stop drinking and things like that. And, you know, so I'd love to talk about sobriety more. It's something that it means the world to me, and where I'm at with my sobriety. You know, I'm coming up on 11 years, and at that point you start to really want to help, you know, other people who are struggling still.
Yeah.
So I'd love to be able, if you help one person, it's worth it. You know, it's worth it. And so I'd love to talk about that. I'd love to talk about parenthood. I'd love to talk about music. I really would prefer not to talk about soccer, but I will every now and again if you guys want to. But I think that's all kind of old and in the past. I think everybody's heard enough about that part of my life. But yeah, no, I guess what I'm saying is I'm saying this out loud in front of you and to the camera so that if people feel like they want to comment, like, please, seriously, like, you won't hurt my feelings. You can say, no, I don't think you have any business doing it, you know, and I still might.
I think the most important thing is figuring out whether you want to do it or not, you know.
Sure.
And
I think I want to, and I've been told by several people, you should, and so it's just, man, I can't tell you, this is cool. I love what you're doing. I love the guest. I almost feel unworthy of being on here because of the guest you've already had. I really appreciate your time and letting me come on.
Yeah, man. I mean, like we said before, the garage has been such a prominent part of these conversations, and I thought it was a really great time to just have you on and talk about our experience together and talk about what it was and what happened and tell your story. So
if there's any more questions, I still live downtown. I work right down the street from Tyler here. I believe it or not, even after all the residual followers that I still have on social media platforms from the garage, I don't get a lot of messages. So if you were to write me, I would see it. Yeah. I think people sometimes see the number on there like, oh, he probably gets too many messages. He's not going to read that. That's just not true. I see most of them, and I'd be happy to answer any other questions that may have been sparked in this conversation.
Yeah. Well, good deal. Well, with that all said, I suppose today, even though I feel like we have a million more things we could talk about,
I
think we could wrap it up, but I think we're going to have chances to talk again. So
definitely.
I guess we'll just pick it up next time, eh?
Hey, thank you, sir.